Okay, so the recording has started. So for today's lesson, right, we're going to be using DaVinci Resolve to do your very first track. So let me just talk quickly about this first. Now, all these notes and everything, they look very scary, and if you don't know what you're doing, right, this can appear to be very complex. But if you understand the steps, right, it's actually quite straightforward and quite, I wouldn't say easy, but I just need practice, all right? So this is a shot that I did at Boat Quay. All right, so you know this famous statue at the it is Bolero statue of this fat bird. I call him the fat bird. So basically, I took a shot of this and I went around it, and then after that, I brought in the shot to extract the 3D motion of the camera. Okay, everything is running a little bit slow now. Let me just see whether I can go over to 3D view. Yeah. So basically, let me just show you the original footage first. Maybe that will play back a little bit better because right now it's loading everything into the memory. Okay, let me just go over to the original clip itself. Okay. So this is what the clip looks like. Let me just try to go over to the original clip. Now, what I did here was I converted this clip into an image sequence. That's why it appears a little bit choppy. All right, I took the original movie file and I converted it into a image sequence. Okay, this is something that I will show you guys how to do it within Resolve. Now, previously, right, in you can also do it in Nuke as well. Okay, previously, I taught the other batch of students to use another software, free and open software that is Blender, okay, to convert an image sequence. In fact, this is the sequence that you guys will be working on. All right, so what I did was, this is Blender. Okay, this is a free software that you can actually bring in and convert this into an image sequence. Okay, the first step we need to do is to convert the movie into an image sequence. Now, is it necessary to do this all the time? No. I mean, if you are short on time and if you've got a fast enough computer, you can use the movie file straight away to do the tracking. But the industry standard, right, where I come from, right, we almost never use, in fact, we never use the movie files itself to track directly. Okay, what happens is that we convert it into like a slightly lower resolution file. Like for feature films, right, the resolution minimum, right, the feature film resolution is like 4K resolution. And what they do is that they downscale it. They reduce the size of the image to a much more manageable resolution. Like usually HD resolution is good enough for me, or sometimes 2K resolution, right? And also depending on your hardware, because you can imagine if you are trying to process a super high resolution image, right, everything just slows down. Okay, so if you don't have a fast enough computer, um, then when you're doing this match moving, right, you're just adding another layer of processing uh, for the software. Okay, so for example, if you're working on a movie file, the movie file, right, itself. Okay, let me just go through to show you the contents of the movie file. And I think on all the computers that you guys have, right, you should have the media information software installed. All right. Let's see, where is my file? Okay, there you go. So this is the file that I shot using the Blackmagic camera. Now, on your computers later, you guys, right, will have to go and copy this file. Okay, so this file, right, is labeled as VFX footage inside your DEE Z drive folder for students folder, and then there's a folder called VFX footage. and then within the VFX footage, there is a folder called BM Ursa Mini or Blackmagic Ursa Mini. Okay, so you want to go inside and look for the folder that says car park. Okay, so what I want all of you to do later on is to copy the files. You can copy any of the 3 files. In fact, to just keep it consistent, right? We are going to use the very first file, the A047, this file here. Okay, so just copy this file into your data drive. Okay, so create your own personal folder, whichever computer you pick to work on. Please go and create your own personal folder on the data drive. Please do not create any work folders on your C drive or on the desktop. Okay, please take note, this is very, very important. Do not create any work folders on the desktop or the C drive. Please remember that, because the school lab computers are installed with deep freeze. Okay, so what this program does is that every time you hit restart the computer, everything in C drive will be reset, will be wiped out. So if you do not want that to happen, please save all your files in the data drive, which is usually the E drive, okay, the Echo drive or the Elephant drive. But depending on the lab, okay, the data drive might be another letter. So please ask okay, Mr. Churchen to verify with you all. Okay, so remember this, do not save your work files on the desktop or the C drive. Please make sure you save them all in the data drive. Create your own personal folder. Okay, just put your IC number underscore followed by your name. Go inside, create another subfolder, maybe DEE, and then put all your work files there. Keep everything organized. All right, so you know where to find them. Okay, so copy this file, and then this is the file that we are going to work on. Now, as I mentioned, if you were to right mouse click on the file, all of the computers, I believe, in the school, right, will be installed with this little program here called Media Info. All right, Media Info. So if you right mouse click on it and click on Media Info, now I'm not sure whether Media Info is available for a Mac computer, but this is a free and open software. You can actually install it onto your computer. So this software is very useful. It tells you a lot of information about the clip itself. It tells you things like what camera is being used to shoot this. Okay, this is very, very useful, especially when you're doing um, match moving. You want to know what device is being used, and you will find out information like what is the bit rate, okay, what is the data rate that's being used to encode this file. All right, things like aspect ratio, a lot of information you can see. All right, the type of encoding format, okay, the picture format 422 encoding, which is a pretty high quality. All right, frame rate, okay, another important thing. This is the frame rate, 25 fps. Okay, scan type, all right, progressive. Okay, is it interlaced or is it progressive? This is very important information. Okay, so all this information, okay, these will be helpful when you need to do things like doing your match moving. Okay, even tells you like things like shutter speed and everything. Now, the reason why we have so much information on this particular file, on this video file, is because it is shot on a professional Blackmagic design camera. Okay, so these cameras are actually available for you. All right, so if you guys need to book out these cameras, right, you can actually book out the camera and then shoot footage for your projects. But at this point in time, I think I will be providing you with the footages, okay, so that you guys can do the practice. All right. So once you got the file brought into the scene, okay, so and converted it into image sequence. Okay, let me just walk you through the process. Then you bring the clip right into DaVinci Resolve. Now, DaVinci Resolve, as I've shown you guys last week, right, you have to bring in the clip itself, and then you have to drag it into the cut, then so that it appears in the timeline. Then you drag the playhead over the clip, then you go over to the fusion, then you'll be able to see the clip itself. Okay, so all of this looks very, very scary and confusing, but actually It's, once you've done it a few times, it's quite easy. So you can see here, what I have here is that the motion of the camera, right, being replicated in this scene here. All right. Okay, so you can see the trajectory, and then the floor which I created. I think I accidentally moved this thing several times. Uh, so you have to be very careful when you are manipulating around the view clip. Let me just turn on my shortcut key display so that you guys know what I'm pressing. Okay, so holding Alt and then middle mouse click is to revolve around. Okay, in 3D mode. Now we haven't really explored much on the 3D mode, so later I will just go do a quick introduction into it. Okay, so let me just go through each of this flow. All right, let me just get rid of this one first. Now, when you first bring in the footage, right, this is what it looks like. Let me just go to the view. So this is the raw footage, and this has been converted into an image sequence already. Right. Then after that, I'll go into a node called Lens Distort. Okay, so let's take a look at the Lens Distort. If I press number 2, if I toggle between this 2 and 1, okay, you can see the difference. Now I'm going to toggle between the Lens Distort and turn it on and off. If you look over to the Lens Distort inspector, there is a red button here which you can activate and deactivate the distortion. All right. Okay, if I click on it, you can see the sides. Observe the sides, right? You can see that it is being stretched out a little bit. Okay, so what I did here when I brought in the clip is that when I shot this on my DSLR. My camera has a sort of a circular distortion. If you look at the side, right, there's a very slight bend. There's a very slight bend to all the straight lines. Okay, so you can see that there's a straight line here, but then it seems to curve outwards like that. It's just very subtle, and you can't see it very well unless you have a black and white grid placed in front of your camera. So you need to run a undistort. Okay, you can need to turn on the lens distort and then enable it, and then you need to straighten everything else. So what with the undistort here, I had to manually do this. Okay, because when I shot this with the lens settings, right, I did not put it in front of a grid. So normally when you do a undistort, right, you need to film a grid. Okay, let me just quickly show you what it's like. Okay, so this is say why do we need a lens distortion grid? So for VFX on set, so this guy will explain very well why you need to have a grid. So usually for big visual effects productions, right, like Lucasfilm, every lens, right, will be calibrated, okay, with a lens grid that looks something like this. Let me just stop here. Like this one. So you usually position the camera in front of the grid, and then you keep on tweaking, right, from the distortion. Like for example here, you can see that when you place the camera in front of the grid, you can see the distortion very, very clearly. Then when you bring in this original footage into the software, you undistort it. You just twist it back. And for every setting of the lens, right, for example, when you adjust the lens to 30, let's say the lens is a zoom lens. If you zoom it to from 32 millimeters, right, the distortion will be different. Like if you zoom in, there will be a slight change in the distortion again. So over here, they're using the nuke to do the lens distortion or undistort. Okay, so let's see how they do it. So this one, right, they actually draw the lines onto it. Then after they run through the undistort, you can see that it is completely flattened out. Now, why do we need to go through this lens distort process, especially for Matchmoving? Now, the Matchmove software, in fact, most Matchmove software will do the solve much better if it is flat, if everything is on a flat plane, if everything is undistorted on a flat plane. Now, if you refer to your notes, right, I talked about uh, the the different types of lenses, right, that can actually cause this kind of distortion. Okay, there's a spherical lens, okay, and a spherical lens. Okay, let me just try to bring out the images first. Okay, these are all in your notes, so you can just refer to it. Now, a spherical lens, right, will create usually all this type of distortions. Okay, the image didn't load up. Maybe I'll just use this as an example. Okay. Now, if you look at the spherical lens, and when you try to focus something on a flat plane, a spherical lens will usually cause a kind of distortion. Whereas a spheric lens, okay, is specifically ground in a certain way, so that it has this lens profile. So when you focus, right, everything, right, all the distortion, right, will not appear. And this type of spherical lens focus better on a flat plane. Now, most of the lenses, in fact, our human eye lens is a spherical lens as well, because it is meant to be focused on a curved plane. Now, now the back of our eyeball is curved. So when we look at images with a spheric lens, right, of course, everything doesn't appear distorted. Uh, a straight line is a straight line. However, if it is focused on a flat plane, then the straight line will become curved. Okay, there's a reason why there is this significant difference between spherical lens and aspheric lens. Okay, but for most movie cameras, right, they are mostly a combination of spherical and sometimes aspheric lenses. So you need to be able to understand what kind of distortion, right, these kind of lenses will produce. Okay, so the gist of this is that we need to undistort. Okay, whatever footages that we see, we need to undistort. Now, for a lot of match move software, let me just show you a very powerful match move software in the industry called Synthesize. Okay, this is my own personal copy. I think you can get it for about 400 plus US for the pro version. Okay, I have not updated this for a while already. So anyway, this software, right, is designed specifically for match moving, and the speed in which it works, right, is incredibly fast. Okay, somehow I just managed to crash it. Okay, never mind. I'll just open up okay, previous example. So you can see this is a professional match move software that's dedicated just for doing match moving. Now, other software out there are like 3D equalizer. This one is like an industrial strength one used by a lot of visual effects studios. Then another one is PF Track. Okay, so this Synthesize is considered the more affordable version for like independent visual effects studios, but a lot of movie studios, visual effects studios also use this software because it is extremely fast and it's very, very efficient. Okay, so you can do your tracking and then you can export. Now, the good thing about this is that you can actually do your distortion, right? You can actually do your lens distortion calculation. You can give it to the software, and the software will try to do the lens distortion automatically by itself. Okay, so that is Synthesize. Now, another software that I want to show you that is capable of doing match moving is, of course, uh, Blender. All right, I've showed you guys this before. Let me just see whether I can load the movie file. So if you go and load the movie file in Blender, so again, this one I have not, I can bring in the sequence. Okay, and then I can run the sequence, and then I can do the tracking. So for this one, it's going to be a little bit more labor intensive because there is no, there's an auto function, but the auto function is not as uh, refined and well developed as a professional tracking software. But I just wanted to let you guys know that if you want to do tracking, you can also, you want to use a software that is free and that's available. Blender can do the same thing as well. However, it's just going to take you a longer time, but it can deliver very, very good results if you know what you're doing. Okay, so same thing, it also comes with its own lens distortion. All right, for example, if under the solve panel there is a what do you call that, a lens undistort, or if a lens solve compensation for the footage. All right, so you guys just need to know that you need to do lens distortion correction. Okay, and but then sometimes if you look at the footage, right, and if like for example this footage, you can see there is very, very minor lens distortion. You can see that the edge of this road here is very, very straight. Okay, and yeah, even when I bring it up to here, right, I can only see very, very little lens distortion going on here. Okay, so but then again, when you are solving a difficult motion, okay, for example, if the camera is moving in a very, very or the features, right, that is insufficient for you to solve, okay, then you might want to throw in things like uh, lens distortion correction, right, to improve your solve. Okay, so let's go back to that sequence again. So lens distort. Okay, so now I think I talked quite a bit about lens distort. And then we come to the next curve, color curves. All right, color curve is basically a color corrector which I've added in, right, just to boost up the details of the shot. Okay. So for example, the shot, it came in, this is original shot. It's quite bright. Then after I go through the correction, right, I adjusted the contrast. And sometimes you might want to add in another node, right, so to sharpen, okay, or to increase the detail, okay, so that the camera tracker itself is able to extract in more details. All right, so when you have more details, there's more things to track, and then you will be able to solve the motion. Okay, so this one I already run the tracker now because this is a very long sequence. This is almost 300 over frames. I will not use this as an example, and frankly this shot is also very difficult to solve. Okay, so this shot itself took me quite a while. Now, if I run it through the professional solver, I can solve this in like in a few minutes. But in the solver in the DaVinci Resolve Studio, because this is actually not a dedicated standalone solver, but it is a capable solver and it's fairly easy to use. Okay, so if you understand the steps, you should be able to get very good results. But again, I have to emphasize garbage in, garbage out. If you do not manage the flow of the information properly, right, you will not be able to get an effective solve like that. Okay, so these are the trackers that I've gotten out of it, and then I went through the solve stage. So after I solved it, right, okay, so the camera that I used was my Canon 5D SLR when I shot this footage. So I've entered the correct information, and also I have the lens information, which is 28 millimeters. That's where I set it at. So that's why all this information is very important when you bring your footage to solve for camera movement. Okay, this is why I emphasize so much on you need to know what is your focal length. Okay, what is your focal length and what is the sensor size, which is the film gate that you use. Now, because this is a full frame, camera. In fact, most of the footages that you guys will be using, right, is going to be full frame. Maybe perhaps not the Blackmagic camera. Okay, however, the Blackmagic camera's information, right, the lens information, everything, right, we're just gonna let the camera solve it for us. Okay, so anyway, I got the information, I placed it in, and then it will just increase the chances of solving. And then the third tab here, this is the solve. Okay, I managed to get a soft error under 1 pixel. Okay, remember the value always has to be 1. And the resulting soft camera, instead of 26, is actually 25.3. All right. And it took about 3 minutes, 49 seconds to solve on my computer. All right, so because this is a very, very long shot. Now, for most match move shots, right, you don't have to worry about solving such a long sequence. In fact, next time if you guys happen to work in the industry, right, most of the shots I would say will probably maximum will be about 100 plus frames, okay, or sometimes even shorter. All right. So this one, right, I just want to check out how robust this solver is, and I managed to get this result. I think it is fine. Okay, and I managed to get everything to lock now. Okay, so later once you solve already, you can do things like bring in the 3D objects. You can bring in cut objects, which I'm going to show you how to do it. Okay, so once you've done it, you have to export out the motion. Okay, this is where you bring in things like the 3D objects. And if I go over to the camera view, right, so at this point, right, you can bring in 3D objects, you can bring in 3D shapes. For example, if you lock everything properly, right, you can even replace like the buildings in the background. You can bring in 2D cuts, okay, or 2D elements which you can place in the background. So that's why match moving is very, very critical. In fact, match moving for a lot of productions is the first part of a production line. So the match move is first part of the layout, and then once you've done the match move, then you pass the information over down to animation. Then what animators will do whatever animation they need to do. Then after that, it's passed over to the set designers. They will dress up the whole place, the sets. Then after that, it will pass over to the lighting people. They will start to light. Then after that, the lighting is done already. Then they pass over to the compositors, who start to composite all the elements together, and before it's finally rendered out. This is typically how it works in a production pipeline. Okay, so next week, right? Basically, for this week, we just focus on match moving. But next week, right, which is technically the 10th week, right, you will need to understand about the production pipeline. That one is much more theory. In fact, I want you guys to spend more time to get more hands-on experience on understanding and getting the match move right first. Okay, so let's see. Okay, currently the lessons. Okay, let me just monitor my. Okay, the video is still being recorded. Okay, so I'm just going to continue. So I'm going to start a brand new project, and I'll just go through the processes, right? So I will just go over to new project, and I call it my first match move. Then create. Okay, so once you create a new project, right, everything will be empty. There'll be no clips. All right, then that's where you need to bring in the clip. All right. So I'm going to go over to navigate to the folder and then bring in the clip. So I want you guys to open up the car park clip. I think this one will be be fairly easy to solve. And I want to teach you guys how to convert the clip into a image sequence first. Now I'm going to be using this clip. All right. So I'm just going to drag this clip into the media pool. And then when you drag it into the media pool, right, the clip, you're going to get this message. Say it has a different frame rate than the current project settings. So we are going to change it, okay, because the clip itself contains is 25 frames per second. So we want everything to match the frame rate, okay. And if you look over at the metadata, right, it can even show you like things like 25 frames per second, the resolution, and so on, the length of the clip. All right. So next we go over to cut, all right, and then we're going to drag the clip right into the cut timeline. Okay, so now we have the clip within the timeline itself. Now, of course, this clip runs very well in Resolve because this was shot on a Blackmagic design camera. So it's designed to work very well. Now, I'm going to leave this choice to you all, but I'm going to demonstrate how to convert this into an image sequence first. I'm going to convert it into an EXR sequence. Then I'm going to bring back the sequence as a clip. And then we are going to solve that one instead. All right. So next, we're going to go over to our edit. Bring the playhead over the clip. Then go over to your Fusion. Okay, so now we're going to convert this into an image sequence. All right. So click on the clip. Okay, let me, just now maybe I didn't explain playing clearly enough. Okay, why do I need to convert it into an image sequence? Now, for some video clips, all right, I'm not saying all of them, but for some video or movie clips, right, they are encoded in some weird codec or some codec that is non-standard. Or even worse, they are heavily compressed. Okay, maybe a H.265 instead of H.264, which is an MPEG codec. Okay, for every movie file, right, you need a codec to compress it. Now, again, depending on how fast your computer is, if your computer is very, very fast, it's able to decode, okay, decode the video from uncompressed into a frame rate that you can scrub very quickly, all right, then that's not much of an issue. But if you've got a slower computer, that means that you have to decode the video into an image before you can process it. So you have to go through these different processes. I'm trying to explain the hardware process that the computer is going through. So to skip that process, we convert it into an image sequence. Now, when you have an image sequence, right, an image tend to open up faster than a compressed video, because from a video, you need to strip it out into an image and play back. Okay, that means the computer has to do double work all the time. Whereas an image, right, is I read the image straight away. Okay, that's why we prefer using image sequences when we are doing our match move. And this is the standard when we are doing it in the industry. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to convert this into image sequence. So I'm going to select the media in first, media in node, and I'm going to bring in a node that is called the saver node. Okay, the saver node. Now, if you're using Fusion standalone, right, the saver node is where you export out the image sequence, which I've demonstrated to you all before. So I'm going to click on media in, and I'm going to press Shift or Control Spacebar. Okay, I don't know where that. Yeah, hold on a second. Let me bring in the. Yeah, this one. There is it. There it is. Okay, I'm going to press Control Spacebar. Make sure you're in the node editor. Control Spacebar, and then look for Saver, and then add a saver node. Okay, click on the media in so that it's highlighted. Click on the media in so that it's highlighted. Then holding down to your Shift key, left mouse click and drag the saver until you change it into this blue line and release. Okay, so now it is in the pipeline. Okay, or you can manually just drag it in. Okay, so remember, the yellow is always the input, yellow is the background. Go into the saver. So go inside the saver and look at the what are the properties. Okay, so the saver, right, is basically telling you where do you want to save this sequence. So I'm going to click on browse, and I'm going to browse over to a folder here. I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it Kapak, then underscore sequence underscore seq, so that I know that it's a Kapak sequence. So I'm going to go inside. Then it will only save for this Resolve. The only image format that it will output is from Fusion is EXR. Okay, so I'm going to save this as Kapak underscore sequence, and then I'll just click on save. Now, nothing will happen. Okay, so if you want the sequence, right, to be exported out, you have to run the saver. Okay, you have to run the saver. No, it's different than over here. This is the export, all right, or deliver. So let me go back to Fusion again. So go over to the Fusion tab, and then go over to Fusion, and there is this button below Fusion called Render All Savers. Now, if you are using the Fusion standalone, there will be a green render button there which you can click and then it will do the same thing. All right, so I'm going to click on render all savers. So right now it's going to render the entire sequence into an image sequence. All right, into an EXR image sequence. Okay, so next, okay, while waiting for this to download, we will need to have an image player to actually see what we have rendered out. So there is this very good program called DJV. It's a open source software. Okay, let me see whether I can go to the desktop. Okay, unfortunately I couldn't go elsewhere for now. I was just gonna wait for this to finish. Now, the EXR file, right, is a very, what do you call that? It's quite a versatile file. Is able to contain many layers or many render passes, okay, shall we say. So you need to have a specialized image viewer to view it. Now, Photoshop can view it, okay, but if you want to view the sequence, that means you want to view the entire sequence, you need to use a specialized viewer. Now, when I was working at IOLM, they have an in-house developer, or rather this guy used to work for ILM. He developed this viewer, very powerful viewer that can view very large image sequences, even at full 4K or 6K resolution. All right, so anyway, he left ILM and then he started a company to make that software, and now ILM pays him a lot of money just to use his software. But just to let you know, there is a free alternative and it actually works pretty well, and I just only discovered it earlier this year. And it can view the EXR sequences very well, especially for the 3D students who need to render turntables or image sequences. So you can use that to view other sequences as well. Okay, so now we are done. We are done rendering, converting this into an image sequence. Okay, before we bring it in again, let me just show you the software that I'm talking about. The software is called djv.exe. Okay, it is a free software. I already asked Mr. Churchen to go and download the software. Now, the website is here. DJ stands for the author, okay, Darby Johnston. All right, Darby Johnston Video Viewer. Okay, so the latest version is 2.08. You can download it free. Okay, and so once you downloaded it, okay, I'm just going to show you what the program looks like. Once you downloaded it and you open it up, DJV, this is the latest version. Now, when you open it up, right, you find that, hey, there is no executional file. You need to go into the bin folder and you need to locate the djv.exe. So this is what you do. You have to double click to run the software. So I'm going to double click to run the software. And this is what the software looks like. Remember, this is a freeware. You can just go and download it and basically just unzip it and then you can use it already. I don't think you even need to install it. All right, so just go and open up the sequence, or you can navigate to the folder where we exported out the sequence. Okay, I'm going to grab the first file and then I'm just going to drop it in. So the software should be smart enough to recognize it as a image sequence. I'm going to try one more time. Okay, yeah. And there you go. So you can mouse wheel up and down, or you can just zoom to fit, and you can drag the timeline and you can see that you can play back the frames fairly well. And because these frames are quite big, there's about 6 megabytes in size, so you can click on the playback, right, just to load up the memory first. Okay, I think my RAM allocation is a bit low, so let me just give it a bit more RAM. Yeah, I don't want to allocate too much RAM to it, otherwise I'll crash my computer, because I've got limited RAM here, so I've got only 24 gigs RAM here. Now, the system that you guys are using have 32 gigs of RAM, so you have more than enough RAM. You can click on the RAM icon here to allocate more RAM to it. Okay, I think everything is slowing down because I'm doing a lot of things right now. I'm doing recording and I'm running Resolve, so everything appears a little bit choppy. So, but if if I'm not doing all this live streaming and recording, right, I think everything will run much smoother. Okay, so I just want to let you know that you can use this software to review your image sequence. Okay, so this is the EXR that was exported out. So this is very high quality. So I'm just going to close the program and return back to uh, DaVinci Resolve. Okay, so I've exported out the sequence already. So I don't need this anymore. I can delete this. I can select the node. I can delete this. And let me just go back to the timeline. I can also delete away the clip on the timeline. I don't need it anymore. So the next thing I need to do is I need to bring in that image sequence into Resolve. Right. So let me just go back, and then I'm going to navigate to the folder containing the clip car park sequence. And you can see Resolve will recognize this as a sequence straight away. Then I'm just going to drag it and drop it into my bin. Okay, so this is my car park sequence. Then I'm going to go to my cut, drag it down to my cut timeline, and then go over to the edit. And then you can see I can now play back. You can see that it's playing quite fairly smoothly. I mean, considering that I'm streaming everything right now, this is actually not too bad for image sequence. Then I'll go over to the Fusion, and then that's where we're going to start to do our first tracking. Okay, so let's go through this step by step right now. Now, I deliberately shot this car park, okay, for a reason, because I know that this is going to be very easy to solve. Okay, there's a lot of detail. There's a lot of sharp contrast points, right, on the ground for me to track. Okay, so when you are doing your tracking, right, as if you're doing like for visual effects, you're shooting in a green screen room when there's hardly any details. That's why you see for some green screen studios, right, when they're doing visual effects, they will stick a lot of markers, right, all over the place. Okay, but you have to be very careful. Remember the planar tracking exercise that you all did for the van with the moving logo. All right, so if you put too many markers, right, that means you had to spend a lot of time cleaning those markers up. And not every shot, right, you cannot, for what am I trying to say here? Not every shot, right, will allow you to conveniently just clean up all the markers at one point. All right, so if you have a free camera, right, that means the camera is moving all over the place. All right, then you literally have to track the marker points, and then you have to manually go and paint those trackers out frame by frame. Okay, so different situation, right, requires different methods. All right, so in other words, what I'm trying to say is that if ever next time you're doing a green screen production and you need to put markers, make sure you put sufficient markers so that your camera, right, can detect a parallax. Okay, so what do I mean by parallax information? Okay, so you can see there's a lot of information in the distance, and there's a lot of information that is close to the camera. Okay, so things that are far away whenever the camera is moving, all right, let's say the camera is moving sideways. Okay, things that are far away, right, will tend to move much slower, but things which are right in front of the camera will move much more rapidly. Okay, and in the combination of this shot, right, the camera not only is it moving laterally, it's also panning. That means it is tilting left and right as well. So the software will have to think about ways to solve this as well. Okay, so let me just go through the process. Okay, so media in right now, and the image looks bright enough. I don't think I need to adjust too much. And also, if I zoom in, holding down the control and the middle mouse in and see the detail of this image, even though it's HD, right, is more than sufficient for me to solve. So I don't think I need to run a color correction or even a soft or even a sharpening filter onto it. Okay, so I'm going to apply the, what do you call that, maybe a undistort. Okay, so lens distort, I'm going to look for lens distort, add a lens distort, and then click on the media in, holding down the shift, left mouse click, and then drop it in front here. And I'm going to use undistort. Then the lens distortion model, right, I'm just going to drag this, and I'm going to use the default setting here. Okay, the camera is just nice. We are using the Blackmagic camera, so uh, I'm just gonna drag this out slightly a little bit, not that much. You can see it's just a little bit, just to straighten out the outer corners just a little bit. Okay, maybe 0.016. I think this is good enough. Okay, then with the lens distort applied already. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the correct process would be to aim the camera right with a distortion grid, and then later right bring that shot with the grid, and then you do the distortion calculation. Then we know the exact values. The in the industry we call this the lens calibration. All right, distortion calibration. Okay. So once we've done that, the next step we need to do is we apply the we can straight away do the camera tracker. So to bring in the camera tracker, you press Control Spacebar and you type CTR, camera tracker, all right, and then add. Okay, the camera tracker is added to the media out, which is incorrect. And you want to put the camera tracker after the lens distort. So click on the lens distort node, holding down the shift, left mouse click and drag and drop into it. Okay, or okay, let me just show you another way that you can connect. Okay, if you bring in the camera tracker, okay, remember the output from the lens. Remember, output right is always this gray box here. The gray square box is the output of each of the node. And you drag the output of gray box and you connect it into the input of the camera tracker. All right. So notice once it's connected, right? So I'm only starting to notice this. When the box is connected, it turns white. Okay, when the box is not connected, the output of the box is not connected, right? It is gray color. Okay, so remember, yellow is the background, yellow is the input. Now this will throw some of the, especially the progression students, right, VFX students, because you're also used to using Nuke. If you move your node around, right, you'll notice that the box, right, will also move around. Now in Nuke, right, Nuke's output, basically it just stays put, it doesn't move at all. So if you're coming in from Nuke, this can throw you off. I mean, I've used Nuke and then I come to this and this is confusing the very first time. So just know that when I move this around, move the node around, right, the output node also shifts around. It will shift automatically. Okay, so that's why you all need to remember the colors. All right. So blue, as I mentioned before, is the masking. Okay, the masking input. If you don't know what they are, you can hover over it, and then you tells you what each of these inputs stands for. All right. Okay, so now I brought it into the camera tracker. So I need to view it through the camera tracker. Now, by default, right, there's a viewer 1, there's a viewer 2. Currently, the tracker, you can see, although we've selected the camera tracker node, we are not viewing it yet because viewer 1 and viewer 2 is not activated. So I'm going to activate viewer 1. You can click here, and then now we can see viewer 1. And then we can start to do our tracking. Okay, and we are just going to try to use the auto track first. Don't worry about all these symbols and everything for now. Okay, so we brought in the lens distort. We did a little bit of lens correction, distort correction. Now we are in the camera tracker, and then we are just going to look at the inspector of the camera tracker. That means the properties of this camera tracker. Now for tracking, right, you have to go through every single step. That means first you need to track, then after that you need to add in the camera information. Then after that you do the solve. Okay, so let's do the track first. Okay, let's go through this one by one. Okay, now if I click on preview, nothing happens. Now in order to preview, right, we need to scrub the timeline forwards and backwards. Okay, when you scrub the timeline forwards and backwards, right, you start to see all these green dots start to appear. Okay, that doesn't mean that it already has started the track. What this green dot means is that it is giving you a preview. Basically, the program is telling you that, oh, I detected these areas and I think these are good points for tracking. So what is the rule here? You want to have a good spread of points. Okay, you want to have a good spread of points that are far away, points that are closer to you, so that when there's camera movement, right, the software will be able to use these parallaxes or differences of distances, right, to solve the position of the camera. Okay, so Remember, when you guys are doing your Photoshop lineup, okay, you have to manually move it until it matches the perspective. You can think of it like the software is doing the perspective lining up, right, every single frame. But in order to help it, right, it minimum, right, it needs about 2 or 3 frames where the camera is moving differently. For example, it needs to have a difference between this frame and this frame, okay, so that it can calculate the movement where the camera has shifted due to the perspective shift. All right, so that is how it calculates the movement of the camera. So now with the preview on, and if you want to see the green dots, you have to scrub the timeline. So basically it's telling us that, okay, these are good points. Okay, we have some good points here, and then we can track. And notice for this particular clip here, I've decided to film it in a place where there's not much traffic movement or where there's not a lot of people walking around. Now, if you want to get a good track, one of the most important things you need to know is that you do not want to track things that have movement inside. Okay, if there's a lot of things that are moving, all right, that will mess up your solve. Okay, that will give you the false information, basically garbage information. So we have a good spread. Now, if your spread is no good, now we move on to the next step of the properties, the detection threshold. Now, if you scrub the detection threshold, the green dots will disappear for a short while, and then you can see how much, whether they are bunching up together or whether they are spreading out. Okay, then the minimum features. If you reduce this, okay, you can increase the number of features that you want to solve. Now, some of you might think, oh, okay, good. The more features, the more points I can track. Definitely, I'll be able to get better information. True. However, more information means that the computer has to work extra hard to keep track of all these points. So if you have a slow computer, you want to try to avoid having so many points bunched up like that. Because from my experience using this, it's going to slow down the computer tremendously. So I think the default settings is actually good enough. Okay, I'm going to use the default settings. Now, if you feel that you got way too many points, you can then slide the slider up. Okay, of course, the less points you have to track, the faster the tracker will work. However, that means if it tracks too few points, right, it might not have enough information to solve the shot. Okay, so for detection threshold, I think basically the detection threshold is how sensitive do you want the tracker to detect points. Okay, so basically these are what it means. All right, then we move on to the track channel, Luma. Okay, that or red, green, and blue. Luma means the almost like the brightness and darkest areas. So it will track based on contrast objects. Okay, then red, okay, means it will track anything, right, that has a red channel in it. Green channel. So you can actually preview by pressing G. This is the green channel. Press R by clicking R. This is the red channel. B. This is the blue channel. Okay, if you press B again, you will jump back to the RGB. Okay, and since this one don't have alpha, if you press A, right, okay, there's no alpha. Alpha is a transparency channel. If I press A again, okay, we'll go back to the original colors. You can also do the same thing here in the drop down. You can switch between all the channels of this image. Okay. All right, so we're going to track the Luma because Luma generally works pretty well. And basically, I've adjusted the minimum features until it is quite few, so that I think I can track this quite fast. All right. And I'm going to leave the track range is render. That means the entire range. Okay, the render range is basically these two yellow lines here. If you hold down to control key, right, you can set which is the area that you want to track. Okay, let's say if I hold down to control, I'll track from 0, and then I left mouse click and drag this yellow point. Basically, I'm tracking this entire range. So this is what the render stands for. Okay, you can click down and you can see other value. You can specify the number of frames, the frame range that you want to track. Okay, I'm going to keep it at render. Now, bi-directional tracking, what does it mean? Usually, I will turn this on. Okay, I prefer to have bi-directional tracking. Reason is because once you track one round, you want the tracker to go back again to track to verify the tracker point positions. So I usually enable bi-directional tracking. Okay. Then the gutter size. What is this gutter size? Gutter size is like the edge of the frame here. Now, if you reduce the gutter size to like 0.5, the minimum, the tracker points will actually start to track all the points nearer to the edge. Okay, this is what the gutter size means. If you increase it, right, then it will actually, I need to scrub this. You can see there's a, let me just the threshold, just give it a, yeah, exaggerated amount of points first. So you can see. So you can see the gutter size, you can see that there's a gap. The gutter, right, is much, much bigger. So for gutter size, right, I will usually use the minimum because I want it to track as much as I can near closest to the edge. Okay, the value for this one, for some reason, I cannot bring it down to 0. That means I cannot track it like literally touching the edge here. So not a big deal. Right now, of course, my minimum features is way too much. I'm going to bring it back to this value. Now, and then, yeah, this range is fine. Okay, then now the track defaults. Now, for my setup, right, I prefer to use, you can use optical flow, and then there is the fusion tracker, and then there is the planar. All right, so there are 3 different track methods. Now, optical flow, right, is just an algorithm of detecting features, right, within image sequence. All right, they will try to basically try to look for features in between the frames as the frames progress through. All right, so optical flow is usually the fastest. Okay, but in when I was working in the industry, right, the type that we use a lot is the planar type. However, this one is much slower, and the pattern, right, we use is this A-fine. TRS is basically it look for trackers with transformation. R is transformation rotation, then transformation rotation and scale. All right, that means that there are changes in order. Okay, A-fine and perspective, right, these, right, are the slowest, but it might give you very, very good and accurate results if you were to choose these. Now, from my experience, right, A-fine is like the best, the most precise. However, the drawback is it's very, very slow. Okay, especially at least for this program. Okay, so for this exercise, we're not going to use this. We are going to switch back from planar to optical. Now, Fusion has its own tracker. You can also try it out. Just know that there are different options for tracking. Okay, the tracking methodologies that's available for the camera tracker. So I'm going to use optical flow because it's very fast and it works very well. So once you're ready, okay, you can start to do auto track. Okay, so I'm going to click on auto track. So you can see the blue points here are the track points that are being detected, and you can see the trail lines behind them. All right. Now track points, right, are just going to come appear and disappear. So on my system, this is considered fast already. So if you are using optical flow, if you're using the planar affine track method, right, this could slow down maybe 3 to 4 times. Okay, it'll be 3 to 4 times slower than this. All right. So we'll just let it track first. And I'll talk through this. So there's a reason why we do not want to have things that are moving around. When you have things moving around, right, you'll add in a lot of false data, false information, and it will give you a wrong solve, in other words. The thing is, you want to keep on tracking the same point, right, as long as possible. Okay, and after that, it will just go back to tracking the entire clip again. So this clip is 301 frames, so it's not a short clip at all. So it's fairly long as well. It's about 12 seconds. But I would say compared to fully manual trackers, right, this type of tracker is much easier to use. But in the industry, right, I would say Like for double negative, from my colleagues who used to work there and ex-colleagues, and then my current colleagues, right, we almost never use auto track at all. In fact, we never use auto track at all. So all the points that you see, right, we have to manually track. And in solving a camera movement, right, minimum, okay, minimum you need about 6 to 7 tracks. 6 to 7 good tracks if you can track across the whole shot. Okay, that means if that track disappears, right, you have to quickly go and find another track to continue tracking, or we call the handover track. So you need to track as many, or rather a continuous number of points, and minimum about 7 to 8 tracks, or 6 to 7, 7 to 8 tracks, right? Just to give enough information for the software to solve the position. Okay, so we are almost done. And we can turn off the preview right now. Otherwise, right, the preview will always keep appearing, the preview auto track. And then you can scrub the timeline back and forth. Now, if your timeline is moving a little bit slow, okay, if it's responding a little bit slow, okay, let me tell you how to increase the speed a little bit. So move your cursor over here, right mouse click, okay, uncheck high quality, uncheck motion blur, and turn on auto proxy. Okay, so this will speed up your interactivity a little bit, all right? I think on your computers, right, it might be a little bit better. Speaking of which, okay, I forgot to tell you guys how to uh, increase the performance of your DaVinci Resolve. So let me just save this project first. Okay, if you click on the DaVinci Resolve and you click on Preferences, and if you click on Memory and GPU, all right, there is a option for you guys to turn on OpenCL. My graphics card, right, doesn't. Okay, I think I'm going to turn on auto. No, maybe not. Okay, for your graphics card, right, I suggest you turn on OpenCL because my graphics card is a fairly old graphics card. So on your side, right, if you go to memory and GPU, you go and click on OpenCL and then you hit save. All right. So after you saved already, you have to close DaVinci Resolve and reopen it again. Okay, otherwise it will not have these settings. Apparently, from what I've read and from the experiments I've done in school, OpenCL seems to perform better. All right, so if you can enable OpenCL on your computer. Let me see what I can turn on OpenCL and then save. Okay, I'm not going to restart my computer. I'm just going to continue. Okay, the CUDA drivers still works fine. So a tip for those of you who are considering buying a new computer. So please make sure you buy a computer or laptop, right, that is equipped with an NVIDIA graphics card. And make sure that it's a GTX type, or if you can afford it, the RTX series cards. Okay, so that you will have a much better experience when using the software, because this software is very memory hungry and it uses very high spec requirements. Okay, so now you can see all the tracker points have been tracked already. We're going to move on to the next stage, which is the solve stage. Right. So I'm going to click on camera. All right, so I'm going to use the default settings, 25, and then the film gate is actually the Blackmagic camera. So Blackmagic 4K 16 by 16 by 9. All right, so I'm not going to change anything, so I'm going to leave it at that. So if you know the exact camera model, right, you can click on the drop down and then you can look for it. So all these are the what do you call that? The most popular movie camera settings or backplates, and even DSLRs. A lot of amateurs, right, like to use the Canon DSLRs to shoot the footage, including me. I'm using the 5D, so the settings are all there. All right, so you can. I think for most of us, right, we will be either choosing the HD 16 by 9 or the for the footages that I'm passing to you guys, the most likely the Blackmagic settings. So basically, I don't have to do anything here. For focal length, right, I'm just going to let the software solve it for me. So now I can go over to the solve. Okay, this is the solve panel. So right now we have not solved anything yet. So what does solve have? What does the solve do? When you hit on solve, right, it will take all these points and it will start to figure out where the camera is based on these points movement, and then it will try to calculate the 3D location of these points, okay, based on the movement, okay, movement of these points. Okay, so everything here you see, all the solve options, I'm going to leave it at default first. And if you look over at the properties here, there are a total of 1,631 trackers that are being detected, right? That is a lot of track points. Okay, so we can go ahead and hit solve. Okay, so this one can take a while because it is, how long is this? This is 300 frames. Okay, I think from my experience, right, this is probably going to take about 20 seconds or 30 seconds to solve. Okay, which I think in current standards, right, this is actually not bad already. Now, if you're talking about what almost almost 20 years ago, now the very first early software like Bujo, right? Bujo is one of the earliest tracking software. From what I understand, if you want to solve a shot like that, right, it will probably take you maybe 12 minutes or even worse, half an hour just to track this type of shot. So the software back in those days, and because of the old hardware, it takes a long time to solve. And let's take a look at the result. And we get a very, very good result here. Let's take a look at the solve summary here. You don't have to do much. The solve error is 0.52, which is fantastic. All right. Anything that is below 1 is good. All right. 0.7 is good enough. All right. If you got a very difficult shot and you get 0.9, that is still passable. All right. But anything that is above 1, okay, that is not a good solve. It also managed to solve the camera focal length for me. So it managed to detect the focal length as 25.21. I think this is good enough. Then it tells me it took about 13.84. And then I'm happy. In fact, I can start to work with this shot straight away. However, I'm going to show you how to refine the shot. I can even get this solve error down even more. Okay, so if you scrub through the timeline, you'll notice that there are some points that are red in color. And if you hover over these trackers, it will tell you the error, the solve weights, all the information like the track error information. And you can actually manually go and select all the red points. You can scrub through and then select all the red points yourself. And you can press delete to delete them. Even those which are orange. Okay, basically how to tell. If it's green, they are good points. If it's red, they are bad points. So go and delete away those red points and orange points. Okay, so you can manually select and delete it like that. Or there's a faster way, which is to use the filter, the track filter. Okay, so for example, you can select points which only appear for a short while. So minimum track length, it has to be 6 frames. So you can increase the number. Let's say I want to increase it, like I want minimum, right, to be 8 frames. That means, right, I need to see the each of the track points at least 8 frames, right, before I will consider them for the solve. And then the maximum track error and the maximum track error. Okay, let's say I want to make it even stricter, and the maximum solve error, you can drag the slider until you can see more of the yellow start to appear. Okay, so now I've selected quite a lot of points. You have to be very careful here. You can see right at the selected tracks here, a lot of the tracks based on this error filters, right, about 615 out of 95 tracks are selected. I can delete them. I can still delete them because I still have plenty of track points. So you just need to scrub the timeline. Just make sure that you have a good spread of green points all along the solver. All right. This is very important. You need to have a good spread. Okay, I think I have some good points in the distance, some good points in front. I'm happy with this. I think I can delete away all these other points which don't satisfy my conditions. Then I can click on the button here, delete. Okay, so now I'm left with 880 points. Still a lot. Okay, then I can hit solve again. Hit solve. And I expect my error to go down a bit more. So instead of 0.5, okay, and you can see it's a little bit faster right now because we have less points. So remember, the less points you have, the faster the solve. Now you can see the solve error has reduced down to this ridiculous level. Now, if you get this value 0.19, this is like almost perfect already. Okay, generally it is impossible to get a solve error of 0. Okay, if you get a solve error of 0, it's like you're tracking a computer camera movement. So a solve error of this value, right, is extremely how to say, very good already. This is a very good solve. So now I know that I have my camera locked down. We have an extremely good solve. The next step, okay, is to export this into a 3D space. Now, we haven't really talked much about the 3D space, so this is a good opportunity for you guys to learn about it. So far, whatever we are working on, everything is in 2D. Okay, all the frames you see are just still images, flat 2D. Okay, now that we got a solve, we can export all this information into 3D space. So if I go over to the next tab, which is this one, the export tab, okay, it's going to take the solve information that we have and it's going to recreate the 3D space for us. All right. So we now have the tracker points based on the trackers, and from the video itself, it's very clear to us that these are the ground. This is the flat ground. So okay, let's take a look at this export here. Now I can click export now, and then you'll see everything. But let's just go quickly through this 3D scene export. Now this is an area which I'm afraid a lot of you might get a little bit confused. So I'm gonna go through this slowly. Okay. So what is going to happen is that when I hit export, right, it's going to generate a ground plane for us. Okay, but we need to tell the solver where is the ground plane, because right now the software is not so smart enough to recognize, oh, okay, this is the ground. I will orient the camera nicely to the ground. Okay, unlike the professional software like the what do you call it, the Synthesize. Okay, Synthesize actually is smart enough to actually figure out where is the ground, but this one is not. Okay, so we have to tell the software where is the ground plane. So I'm going to select. Okay, I'm going to select the points which I think is going to be the ground plane, and then go over to the 3D scene transform. Now, the 3D scene transform right now, because we have not exported anything yet, we can't change anything. But however, we can tell the exporter where is the ground first. So click on the align and change it to underline. And you will see a bunch of buttons right now start to appear. All right. So we have scale. Okay. Scale is like to one generic 1 unit. So this scale is kind of useful. For example, let's say if you are on set, okay, if you're on set and you took out a tape measure and you measure the distance between this tracker and this tracker. Let's say, for example, you actually marked out this tracker and you say that this tracker is 1 meter. All right, then you can use the scale function to select these 2 points, right? And then you can say select from selection. Okay, and then you can enter the real world distance as 1 meter between the 2 points. Okay, then you click OK. And then now it will automatically calculate the scale for you. All right, so that is scale. All right, so now how about the ground? How the ground plane? So I need to select the ground plane. For ground plane, you need at least 3 points. Okay, for example, you need to have 3 points, right, that you know that falls on the same plane. Okay, 1, 2, and 3. These 3 points must be on the same plane. But if you want it to be even more aligned, I suggest you try to select more points that you know for sure. Okay, I know for sure that all these points, okay, that I see here, okay, be careful, don't select points that are not in the same plane. Okay, what do I mean by same plane? That means, right, they must all be lined up on the same flat surface, the same plane. Okay, that's what I mean. Okay, you can select as much as you want. I'm going to select all these points. Okay, maybe those that are on the grass, maybe not. Okay, I just want to select those. Holding down the control to deselect. Okay, I just want to select those that are sort of lined up along the ground. Okay, like these on the concrete points. Okay, so all these points I'm now selected. So now I go to orientation. Okay, orientation. The XZ plane. Okay, the XZ plane, right, is basically, okay, now in 3D space, Y is always pointing to the sky, and X and Z is the ground. All right, so this is always defaulted to XZ plane to the ground. Okay, unless you want to like align this to the wall. All right, so XZ plane to the ground, and then with this selected, click on the button, set selection, and you see the numbers will automatically change. Then finally, the origin. Okay, the origin is basically the 0, 0, 0 coordinates of 3D space. Okay, if you learn a little bit about 3D already, origin is where you see the center of the grid, where you create the object. So now we want to position the center of the grid. So I'm gonna select this point here. You just need one point. And then I'm just gonna click on set selection. And then this will become my center point. Okay, so I'm gonna scrub to the end. Okay, you can see the point sometimes disappear and then reappear again. All right, so I think this point is good enough. I'm going to use that point as my origin. Then with all this done already, now I can export. Now the ground plane, if I click on the ground plane options here in the inspector, the default color of the ground plane is going to be this purple color. So I'm going to change it to another color. Maybe I'll change it to a bright red color so that we can see it a little bit better. And everything else, we're going to leave it as a default. Then, and now I can hit export. All right. If you look at the node editors right now is very empty. So later when I click on this and I hit export, it's going to be populated with the 3D objects. All right. So I'm going to click on export. And now with all these nodes selected, I'm going to pull this down. You can see that the export comes out from here. And then right now is how do we see the export? Because right now we are still looking at the camera tracker. Okay, in fact, let me just split into two window views, hide the media pool. So this is viewer 1, this is viewer 2. I'm going to click on, you can see a new merge. This is called a merge 3D. Now you guys are familiar with the merge, the normal merge. The normal merge is only for 2D objects. Okay, right now because we're working in 3D space, we have a 3D merge. All right, so click on 3D merge, and we want to take a look at what the 3D merge looks like here. So press number 2, and you can now see, all right, the aligned or the camera with the movement of the object. All right. So if I click on playback, you can, or rather I scrub the timeline. I think it's much better that way. You can see the camera is moving along the flat plane. But you notice something. This is my 3D grid, but this is the exported grid just now, the ground plane. But it is not lined up. It's not lined up to the world grid here. Right. So how do I get it to line up? So we have to go back to camera tracker. Remember, we set this to underline when we hit export. We can still fix this. So click on aligned. All right, click on align. Then after that, you click on update previous export. And then the exported version will now look like that. Okay, hold down to Alt and middle mouse click. And then you can see the camera moving accordingly to the position. All right. Okay, I think I've accidentally shifted the camera just now, so I'm just going to undo a bit. Okay, so make sure it's aligned. And right now, because we are looking at both the camera tracker and the 3D merge, it just appears a little bit very confusing. So I'm going to click on the merge, the exported version, and then this is what it looks like. So right now, we are in the 3D space. Okay, and how do we change the views? If you look over to the lower left-hand corner of the viewport, you see this button here. All right, or rather this icon here. You can see that we are now in the perspective view. Let me just realign everything. So you can see this is the x-axis, this is the y-axis. It shows you in the icon here. So if I want to see what the camera is seeing, I need to change to the camera view. So to change to the camera view, we have to right mouse click, okay, on this symbol here, and then change the camera view. And now we can see, okay, that the camera is lined up, or at least tracked to the ground. Now you can start to actually put in things, and then you can start to composite stuff. However, you notice that the ground grid, right, is not really lined up, okay, to the floor grid of this car park. Okay, what I want to do is I need to rotate this until it matches the ground level. Now some of you might start to actually select, okay, the ground plane. Okay, in this case the ground plane is this red one, red ground plane, and then you can click on the transform node. All right, and then you can start to rotate it. Okay, you can do that. Okay, but the origin or the world grid itself, okay, let's say right now I try to rotate this to match. Now the world grid itself will not be lined up. Okay, so my preference is that I will try to rotate it before I export it out, or I'll rotate it and I'll re-export it again to get my lineup to match. Also, right now you can see, wow, there's a lot of this point cloud all over the place, and it just makes everything very hard to see. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to turn the thing off. All right, so let's go back to the camera tracker again. Okay, if you click on camera tracker, it's even worse. You see all the point cloud all over the place. So you click on the camera tracker, click on the options, the locator size. Okay, just bring it down to, in fact, bring it down to 0 until you don't see it anymore. So the other point cloud that you see is actually from the point cloud that we exported. Okay, so you can go over to that point cloud by clicking on the point cloud that we exported, and you can reduce the size so that it's not so, bring it down to a smaller size, so that we want to see the point cloud, but we do not want to see the crosses so big. Okay, also the grid itself, our floor grid is way too big. We want the floor grid, right, to actually be within this size here. So we can go back to our camera tracker, then go to the export settings, scroll down, and reduce the size. I'm going to reduce the size until it's about maybe 2, because right now 2 units. Subdivision, I'm going to leave it at 10. Then I say update previous export, and then now it becomes smaller. Now, okay, this cloud is very annoying. So this point cloud, I think for my export options, I'm going to disable my point cloud. And then I'm going to update my previous export again. And I'm going to delete away this point cloud. Okay, I don't need the point cloud. Now, if you need the point cloud again, you can always come back here and check on the point cloud again. Okay, so now everything is cleaner, and we are looking at the camera tracker. And you can see the grid is much smaller now. So now what I want to do is I want to rotate. Yeah, I want to rotate my view before I export it out again. And I need to switch it back to underlined. Okay, this underline thing, I think it will confuse a lot of you. So meanwhile, just watch what I'm doing first. All right, so you can see the grid, okay, the floor grid, everything is not lining up, and this is not what I want. And also this giant grid right now is also very distracting. I want to hide this grid, so you go over to the 3D view, right mouse click here, 3D options, and then click on grid to hide it first. Hide the weight grid. I just only want to see this floor plane. Okay, so now I'm going to find a angle which I can start to rotate the alignment. Okay, so I will go to unaligned. Okay, when you click on unaligned, right, you can see all these what do you call that, the manipulators are visible. So this one is going to be a bit tricky. We are going to be playing with the orientation. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to rotate this so that this what do you call it, the manipulator, right, will start to, especially the is this the z-axis? No, yeah, the z-axis, right, is lined up with this line. So okay, let me just draw this out so you can see. Right now the z line is pointing this angle like this. Okay, I want the z line to be rotated until it line up with this straight edge here. Okay, so I'm going to rotate. I'm not going to rotate z, I'm going to rotate along the y-axis. So if I rotate the y-axis by dragging this, you can see the symbol. Oops, this is position, sorry. Rotation. If I rotate, you can see that it is rotating and I want to rotate it until you can see that it is parallel along here. Now everything here is not aligned, okay, because we need to click on this button here, update previous export. Okay, so now you can see it is rotated, okay, but I think I've rotated too much, so I'm going to rotate it back a little bit more. So this one, right, you have to do it several times until you get the rotation to line up. All right, so right now the lineup list seems to be okay, so let me just forward a few more frames just to confirm that the perspective, okay, is lined up correctly. In fact, I think it looks pretty okay. Looks pretty all right. Okay, maybe this one is a bit off. Let me just go to the very first frame. Okay, so for this one, I will have to rotate maybe in the z-axis downwards a little bit. Now, if you click on this roller button, right, and it is too sensitive, one way to rotate at a much, what do you call it, a finer pace would be to hold down to control, left mouse click on this. Left mouse click on this, and you can see it's now rotating much less. Basically, you just want to rotate this until the alignment, right, matches the alignment of what you see in the frame. Okay, and then right now my rotation for the y-axis, I'm just going to rotate it slightly. You can see it moving a little bit. Then you need to update the export. Okay, now you can see that for this part here, I need to rotate the Z downwards. Okay, a little bit more. Until you can see the perspective lines all lined up. And then we can confirm by just moving along the timeline, and you can should see that all these right should line up. Okay, and then now you can see that this thing is a little bit off in the Y rotation. So holding down control, I'm just going to rotate this a little bit more to the left here. Update the previous export. A little bit more. Okay, and then at the same time, go back and track. I think it's a bit too much, right? So now I have to rotate this in the x-axis downwards a bit. Okay, just to check at another angle. Okay, we can spend some time, right, to actually rotate this until we are happy, but I think I'm just gonna stop here, all right, because we're gonna spend a lot of time trying to get this to rotate until it is precisely accurate, right? So I'm gonna fit this view now. Okay, right now we're looking through the camera view, and there's no way for me to zoom in and zoom out, okay, because we are fixed at the camera view, right? So there we cannot zoom in and zoom out. Okay, so the lineup is good. Okay, so now we are going to, okay, let me just resize this. All right, so you can see the grid is now perfectly lined up on this, and we can start to bring in our 3D objects, all right, or even bring in a 2D plane. All right, so let's bring in our astronaut character. Okay, so how do we bring him in? Okay, we have to bring him in as a Fbx. Okay, so we have to go to Maya and then export him out as a Fbx. Right, so let's go and open up Maya. Okay, let me see whether I've got anything else opened. And let's hope that I don't run out of memory and crash this thing. I'm going to save this. Okay, we'll wait for Maya to open up. Then I'm going to load up my my astronaut file later on. But while waiting for Maya to load up, I'm going to just bring in a 3D object first. All right. Now, any 3D object in Fusion, right, can only be connected to the. Okay, I'll come back to this later. Can only be connected to connected to the merge 3D, all right, to the merge 3D, all right. So I'm going to create a 3D object, a 3D shape right now. And to create to create a 3D shape, the fastest way will be to click on this button here. So click on it, and then you have a shape 3D, all right. And then you can connect this shape to the merge 3D. Now let's take a look at this shape 3D first. The default shape is, if you click on it and then press 1, is a cube, all right, or rather a flat plane, not a cube. Okay, a flat 2D plane. All right. So if you go over to the inspector, you can change it into a cube or into a sphere. All right. But currently there is no material. You can give it a color, but you can see that there is no shading, nothing. So if you want to see the object, okay, let's change it to a cylinder instead. Okay, let's give it a cylinder. And then I'm going to give it a sort of a shaded material so that I can see it when I bring it into this 3D merge 3D view. Right, so I'm going to assign a material to it. So the material is a blend material. So press, okay, one more time, Control spacebar, then apply a blend material. Okay, click on the blend material, and then you can give it material. Currently, we can't see any 3D shape object because we need to enable lighting, okay, and we need to enable shadows. All right, so right mouse click on the viewport 3D options to turn on these things so that you can see the object itself. So right now we are ready to bring in this 3D shape into this world. So drag the output of the shape 3D and then drop it into the merge 3D. And then if you go to the merge 3D, right, we should be able to see the object. Okay, so let's click on the shape 3D, and we have to go to 3D perspective view, because right now in the camera view I don't see this object appearing. So I'm going to go over to perspective view, and I'm trying to see where is the cylinder. Okay, the cylinder is actually right in front. In fact, the cylinder is so big that it actually encompasses everything. That's why. Okay, let's go to the top view. So right mouse click on this icon, go to top view, and we can find where is the cylinder. We click on here. We can move the cylinder until it's right in front of the camera. Okay, so now we right mouse click, go to camera view. And there you have it. This is the cylinder. Okay, right now our view is not aligned because we didn't export it out after we so we need to put it back to aligned and then update previous export. Okay, there you go. Okay, I forgot to do that step earlier on. After we align this grid, we will need to change it back to align and then update previous export. All right, so now we also can't see the lighting effects here. So to see the lighting effects in this viewport, you have to right mouse click, go to 3D options, turn on lighting, and then you can see the effect. All right, so now I can switch to my camera view in merge 3D. Then I can select the shape 3D, and then I can move it into place. Now the red grid here, which we exported from our camera tracker, represents the ground plane. So we need to move our cylinder up until the bottom right is lined up with the ground plane. So if you want to see it a little bit more accurately, we can change our merge 3D view, the first view as well, and then change this view, right mouse click to the left view, okay, or the front view. Okay, I'm going to change to front view. Okay, now with the cylinder selected, let me just rename this, press F2 and call it cylinder. We can move the cylinder up and down, translate up and down. In fact, I think you can just enter the value 1, and then it will be perfectly lined up with the ground plane. Right now the cylinder, the diameter is a little bit on the large side. Let me see whether I can reduce the radius. Okay, so now I planted a cylinder, and then you can just review through the camera 3D. There is a node that is visible here. This node is what is going to be rendered out. This is the renderer. So if I click on the camera tracker renderer and press number 2, okay, this is what you will see. All right, and right now on the camera renderer, if you look at the inspector, the lighting is not enabled, so we need to turn on lighting and shadows. And right now there is no lighting because we did not bring in any lights at all. So let's just create a single light. Go to Control Space Bar, just type light, and then we create a point light and add. Then we plug the point light into the scene, and then we're going to move the point light up. Then now you can see the point light lighting up the cylinder. Now, of course, if you want the light to be much more realistic, right, you will have to use another light source. Okay, the point light is just acting more like a lamp. All right, so I think a suitable light, right, will probably be a directional light. Let me just add a directional light. Oops. Okay, make sure you don't select anything first, otherwise it will try to merge into the last thing that you have selected. So Control Space Bar, we're going to add a directional light and then connect it to the scene here. Then I'm going to move my directional light away and then select the angle and rotate the directional light until it matches the lighting conditions of the backplate. All right, so intensity and the color, I'm going to use a slightly warm afternoon sun color. All right, and yeah, reduce the intensity a little bit. Okay, then you can see the final rendered result. And if you don't need the ground plane anymore, we can unplug it, so we don't see the ground plane anymore. Now, of course, this is just a very simplified example for today. All right, if I play back right now, okay, it will start to render every single frame, and then basically you can see that the cylinder is now locked down. Now, of course, we can't play this smoothly right now because let me turn on proxy instead and see whether it will render to the proxy. So we need to render this into memory before we can play back again. Again, like I said, I'm streaming, I'm recording, so everything is running very, very slowly right now. On your system, it might be a little bit better. Okay. Okay, so let's try to bring in other elements. I'm going to bring in 2 more elements, which is the 3D model from Maya, and then I'm going to bring in a flat 2D plane, and then I will conclude this lesson. Then after that, I really want you guys to try it out. I know this lesson is very long and it sounds a bit complicated, but if you practice it a few times, then it will be quite familiar. In fact, since we got many hours in the coming weeks, right, I will be using other examples, and then we will just keep on practicing until you get the hang of it. All right, so this will not be the only time that we are doing this. All right, I'm going to bring in the 3D model. So let me just open up the let's say import, open up the okay, so we got this guy here. So I'm going to export him, and I'm going to bring him into Fusion. Okay, Fusion can actually accept 3D models. So I'm going to export this guy, export him as a Fbx. All right, so instead of OBJ, I'm going to export him as a Fbx Export. Okay, so right now I already have one that's been exported. So I'm going to re-export again. I'm just going to put him closer to what we are doing. And export selection. Okay, so take note that when you export as a Fbx, right, not only are you exporting the model, you're also exporting the material information. All right, so all these will be brought in as separate nodes in Fusion. So let's go back to Fusion, and we are going to import in the astronaut. Okay, so you can go over to Fusion, import Fbx scene. Okay, and we are going to locate the folder containing the astronaut. Okay, sometimes you have to do this twice. Okay, I might have to use another method. Import, what do you call it? I have to use a loader instead, all right, rather than import. So I'm going to use a loader. And I'm going to see whether I can find this. Yeah, open. And let me see whether this works now. Okay, for some reason I've got this problem before. I am able to bring in the Fbx within the standalone Fusion, but for this one I seem to have problems bringing it in. Okay, I'm going to try exporting it again. Right, but I'm going to change the settings. Okay, I'm going to export file, export from. I'm going to use export all instead of export selection, and I'm going to use Fbx export and then export all. Okay, I might end up bringing in other stuff, but I'm just going to try this. I'm going to overwrite the astronaut file again. Okay, so sometimes you have to re-export, use another method. Okay, the loader didn't work. Okay, so I'm going to try one more time. I'm going to use back the Fusion, import Fbx scene, Fbx, and hopefully this one works. This one fails again. Okay, so anyway, I'm not able to bring in the object, but I'm able to bring it, for some strange reason, I'm able to bring it in school. Okay, so I will try again, and then once it works, and I'll probably show it to you guys again tomorrow. Another method is to use in, oh, okay, I think I made a mistake. I should not have import. I should not be importing it as a Fbx scene. All right, this is my fault. All right, I should be importing it as shapes. All right. Okay, that's the reason why it didn't work. I think. Let's see. Click all files, and let's try this. Doesn't work. Let's see. Let me try a Lembic scene instead. Okay, I'm going to try using a Lembic scene. Okay, maybe that's the one that I've exported. Let's see, export all. Okay, I don't remember exporting it as a Lembic. So let me see, OBJ again. Let's try OBJ and export all. Okay, maybe OBJ might work. Okay, and then I bring it in as a shape instead. Import shapes. Let's try OBJ. Still doesn't work. Okay, I'm gonna have to go back to school again and then figure out what is the method I use. But I remember I imported it in as a Fbx and it actually works. So for some reason, I'm not sure why it didn't work this time. Let's see, I try this one. Import media. You try import media instead. Okay, does it work? Let me see, media pool. Okay, we have the Fbx 3D mesh. Let's see whether this works. No, it doesn't work. Okay. All right. Anyway, I will try to figure this out. But okay, I'm gonna so far we only managed to bring in a 3D object that is created within Fusion itself. There's another type of object which is a 2D plane, which you can actually link it with an image texture, which I'm going to show you how to do that. All right. So right now I'm going to select one point within the merge 3D space, the source space which we did, and I'm just going to re-export the point cloud again. Okay, I'm going to go to the camera tracker, then go over to the export settings, point cloud, and I'm going to update my previous export again. Okay, unfortunately I deleted away the point cloud, so I don't have it already. Okay, doesn't matter. Okay, I will show you in another example again. Okay, maybe I should just disable the point tracker, the point cloud rather. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to create a 2D plane object, this image plane 3D. All right, and then I'm going to hook it up in the merge 3D, and now you can see this image plane 3D, which I can go to the transform tab and rotate. All right, and move it up y-axis 1 value. So actually it should be 0.5. Let's see. Yeah. Then I can move it in front in the z-axis. Okay, so what can you do with this plane object here? Now, for this plane object, right, you can actually attach a sort of a card. All right, you can put a image plane with a transparency on it. Okay, I'm going to bring in my favorite character. Now, there's a lot of images that you can find on the web. Okay, I'm going to use Google, and I'm going to search for SpongeBob PNG alpha. Okay, you want or PNG transparent. Then click on images. Okay, look for an image, right, that you can see this checker pattern next to it. But some of it might be fake. Okay, so but anyway, I'm going to use this one. And just want to make sure that this is a PNG. Maybe this one. No. Okay, some of it might be fake, so you have to be very careful. Otherwise, you have to create the transparency yourself. Okay, maybe this one. All right, so I'm going to open up this one. Open image in new tab. And I'm going to save this image. Save image as. Right mouse click, save image as. I'm going to rename this. This is a really long name. I'm going to call it Sponge Bob. And I'm going to drop it into my work folder. And I'm going to bring him in as a media clip. All right, so I'm going to file, import media, and bring him in. Okay, I seem to have some error there. I'm not even able to read this image. So let's see. Okay, so this image is corrupted. Okay, I think there's it could be reason why I cannot save this image. Let me look for another one instead. Okay, hopefully this one will work. I'm gonna replace it with this one. Okay, and let's bring in the image again. Hopefully this time it doesn't get corrupted. I still have the same problem. Okay, let me see what's wrong with this. Okay, so this is not a true PNG image. Okay, let me just try to find another image that I have on hand. Let me just give me a minute. Okay. I have no idea why suddenly the images are very hard to find. Okay, let me just give me a second. Let me just look for. You want to see whether is this a fake image, because some of it are really fake. I need to have one. Okay, open image, new tab. Hopefully this one works. Save image as. And I'm going to just review this. Okay, this one seems to open. Alright, so hopefully I'll keep my fingers crossed this time. This one works. Yeah, okay, finally. And I think this one might be a fake. It might be a fake. What do you call it? Let me just bring this in. And let's view it. Yeah, this is a fake image with the fake alpha. Okay, because it doesn't really have an alpha channel. All right. So, but anyway, I just want to do it this quickly first. I'm going to drag this in. If you have an alpha channel, right, this area here, now I'm connected it to the image plane, and it should have a transparency on top of it. All right. So unfortunately, I don't have I couldn't find the proper image here. So if I were to play back, you can see that with the tracking on, right, you can see the image is now locked onto the ground. Now, to make it a little bit more interesting, I'm going to move this SpongeBob character. Now, I'll probably be repeating this entire process again in tomorrow's lesson. Okay, so what I want you guys to do right now is just to try to uh, figure out how to get the track first. Okay, don't worry about all this merge 3D stuff, because I'm going to be going through this again. Okay, the most important thing is for you guys, right, to understand the process of tracking and solving, and then getting the final result. Okay, so right now I'm in my 3D view, and I can rotate this. I can even animate. Okay, I can even animate by adding a keyframe for the rotation. So as I scrub through the timeline, I can rotate SpongeBob here to face me. So once you activate the keyframe, right, you can actually have him face the camera all the time just by animating the keyframe. Okay, so you can see now the plane is facing. Now the checker pattern is supposed to be transparent, but because this is a fake PNG image, this is not really transparent. That's why we ended up with this. And unfortunately, I couldn't show you why the Fbx is not working. I'm going to try to fix this problem, because in school it worked fine for me. So I'm going to find out what's wrong, why I couldn't import it in. All right. So once you got this done already, the next thing is you have to plug this out from the camera renderer, plug it out to the media output. And if you go to your edit timeline, you should be able to see all the effects right on the edit. And all of this right is exportable now. Now, by going over to the deliver. Okay, so if you go to deliver, you can click on H264, then start to create my first track. Then save it to your location and add to the render queue, and then start to render. Okay, we are not seeing the much of the animation going on. Oh, okay, yeah, it's updating. Okay, it's going to take about 2.5 minutes to render. So after this, I'm going to stop the recording, and I will be uploading the recording onto my YouTube channel so that you guys can watch it. But it's going to take about maybe 10 or 15 minutes to upload and process. Then after that, you guys can watch, and then you guys can try it out on your own. All right, and I think you have more than enough time to do that. Okay, at least, right, do the tracking portion. Now, for those of you who have done your tracking using Nuke, you will know that Nuke one, the Nuke's method might be more straightforward. Okay, but the concept is more or less the same, right? The steps involved is more or less the same. Perhaps the alignment portion might not be as convoluted as this one, but you just need to get the hang of it, and yeah, just do it a few times. And remember, don't just try out this clip here, because we have other clips, right? That I've shot at different locations. I think all of these clips, right, you all should be able to film, or you should be able to do the same tracking easily. Okay, because I deliberately film them in such a way that I know that it's easy to track and solve. So next time when you guys go out, and if you are shooting your own footage, right? So these are the things you need to consider. Does your footage contain enough details for the software to solve? Is there enough parallax? Okay, is there like sufficient movement between the features in the distance and of the features closer to the camera? This is very important. If you don't have any of that, right, then it's very, very difficult. And remember, today we are only playing with this is called a free camera solve. This is a free camera solve. I have yet to talk about another type of camera solve called the nodal camera solve. Okay, the nodal camera solve. So maybe tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, we have basically the full day, I think. Yeah, maybe tomorrow we will go through this entire process again, and then once you guys done enough exercises, then we will talk about doing the nodal solve. Because I think doing this once is not enough. You all need to do this a few times just to get a hang of it. Okay, and then if this is even written in the manual itself, there are just some shots, right? They are just impossible to solve. Okay, especially if the camera moves too much. Okay, so now we've exported, and I'm just going to show you the final result. And this is the completed clip. Okay, so you can see everything is locked down. Okay, so ideally I want this to be transparent. Okay, but it's not, because this is not a real PNG. Okay, so basically this is it. I think as I've said to one student, this is going to give you guys a brain meltdown, especially if you've never done this before. So I'm going to stop the recording now, and I'll be uploading the video shortly, and I will send you the link immediately once the video is ready. So I hope this information that I presented is sufficient for you guys to at least get the first track done. All right, you don't have to export out the video. You don't have to do that. Okay, what you need to do is you have to go through the lens distort, okay, do the camera tracker, and then do the export, and then make sure you do the alignment properly. Okay, so with that, I'm going to stop the video recording right now.